You are about to see the most shocking revelation of the entire Formula One season. New FIA evidence has just been released, and it exposes what truly happened to Oscar Piastri and McLaren in the Qatar Grand Prix. This is not speculation. This is not theory. This is documented proof. For the first time, the FIA has confirmed internal data that shows exactly how McLaren lost a race that was mathematically theirs. Piastri dominated Qatar with a level of control that should have delivered a comfortable victory, yet the new evidence reveals that the decision-making inside the team collapsed at the precise moment the race was most fragile. The FIA findings expose the strategic hesitation, the radio confusion, and the missed safety car window that gifted Max Verstappen a win he could never have earned on pace. These new documents are already causing shockwaves across the paddock. McLaren is now being questioned at the highest regulatory level. Before we break down the new FIA evidence, the radio messages, and how this scandal has reshaped the championship heading into the final round, make sure you subscribe right now. Because what you are about to hear changes the entire narrative of the season. Oscar Piastri started the Qatar Grand Prix with the clarity and control of a driver who understood every corner of the Lusail circuit. His opening laps were a demonstration of pure racecraft. The MCL39 carried extraordinary stability through the high-speed sections, and the medium compound tires remained inside their optimal window with ease. Piastri's pace in the low 1:24 range showed the superiority of the McLaren package, a dominance confirmed by the FIA timing sheets. His lead over Lando Norris grew naturally, and Max Verstappen in the Red Bull had no tools to match him. The early sector analysis confirmed that McLaren held a significant advantage through the technical sequences of Qatar. Piastri could commit to throttle earlier, carry more apex speed, and maintain lower degradation. His rhythm looked effortless. His control looked absolute. Verstappen's RB21 struggled visibly with bouncing and a lack of rotation, forcing him to rely on defensive driving rather than offensive pace. On pure performance, the race belonged entirely to Piastri. Nothing presented a threat. Nothing indicated vulnerability. Then everything changed when the collision between Pierre Gasly and Nico Hülkenberg triggered the safety car on lap 7. According to the new FIA evidence, this was the exact moment McLaren's decision-making sequence began to break down. The FIA files show how Red Bull reacted within seconds, identifying the safety car as the critical opportunity to complete one mandatory stop with minimal time loss. McLaren, however, did not respond. The data shows hesitation, misalignment, and internal doubt as their strategists debated options. The FIA documents include time-stamped logs from the safety car period. These logs confirm that Piastri requested clarity on the strategy while circulating behind the safety car. His engineer told him they would stay out to maintain track position. The FIA analysis states that this instruction ignored the tire regulation requiring drivers to complete multiple stints. By staying out, Piastri and Norris would need to create a gap of more than 25 seconds after the restart to pit without losing track position. The FIA emphasizes repeatedly that this scenario was impossible under modern competitive conditions. Once the race resumed, the FIA timing charts revealed that Piastri's tires had passed through a cooling phase that reduced their initial grip. Verstappen, with fresh tires, gained immediate momentum. Piastri still drove at an elite level, yet the strategic foundation supporting his race had collapsed. The proof appears in the lap delta timing. Verstappen's advantage grew not because he was faster, but because he had been placed in a structurally superior position through his stop under the safety car. The FIA report confirms that the decisive moment arrived when Piastri finally completed his mandatory stop on lap 24. The FIA's gap analysis shows that his outlap, although strong, left him behind Verstappen by a margin that could not be recovered. The radio message that followed became a defining symbol of the race. Piastri said he had no words. His engineer responded by acknowledging the mistake. The FIA included this exchange as part of its review, citing it as evidence of internal recognition of the strategic failure. This single miscalculation has reshaped the championship. With Lando Norris on 408 points, Verstappen on 396, and Piastri on 392, the World Championship has become a three-driver showdown heading into Abu Dhabi. The FIA's new evidence has not only exposed what truly happened in Qatar. It has intensified the pressure on McLaren, raised questions about internal operations, and placed the entire title fight under a spotlight brighter than ever. Oscar Piastri began the Qatar Grand Prix with absolute command of both the circuit and the MCL39. In the opening laps he demonstrated a level of precision that reflected total confidence in the aerodynamic behavior of the car. Every corner exit showed clean traction and the medium compound remained fully inside the ideal temperature range. Nothing appeared fragile. Nothing hinted at danger. The problem did not exist at the beginning. It emerged from the structure of the race itself, created not by pace or driver error, but by the moment the safety car deployed and the strategic landscape shifted beneath McLaren before anyone had time to process the implications. The tire regulations specific to Qatar created a strategic minefield that demanded immediate and decisive reactions. Drivers were required to complete multiple mandatory stints, meaning that every stop carried enormous significance. Piastri managed the early phase perfectly because he was shaping his race around those rules. However, when the safety car appeared on lap 7, the nature of the race changed instantly. The field compressed, tire temperatures dropped, and the advantage Piastri had built through pure pace suddenly became dependent on the decisions made on the pit wall. The problem began the moment McLaren needed absolute clarity and instead delivered hesitation. As the cars circulated slowly behind the safety car, the mathematics of the race grew more complex. Any driver who stopped would satisfy one mandatory stint with almost no time loss. Any driver who stayed out would be forced to rebuild a gap of more than 25 seconds once the race resumed. Piastri had earned complete control of the early race through consistency and discipline, but the situation now required a strategic response that matched the urgency of the regulations. The problem occurred not because McLaren misread the pace but because they misread the implications of the rules in a dynamic moment. Inside the cockpit, Piastri remained calm and composed. His radio message asking for guidance was measured and focused. In return, he received the instruction to remain on track to preserve track position. It sounded logical in isolation, but it ignored the structural context of the race. The problem deepened not because Piastri lacked speed, but because track position under the safety car had become meaningless if it forced him into a mandatory stop later without the required gap. The decision to stay out placed him in a scenario that was mathematically unwinnable once the race restarted. The restart exposed the full weight of the situation. Piastri's tires had cooled significantly during the safety car period and needed careful thermal recovery. Verstappen, on fresh tires, had no such limitation. Even though Piastri continued to drive with excellence, the performance window he needed had narrowed. The problem was not his execution. It was the fact that the tires he carried into the restart had already lost their original grip potential. The delta that formed between his pace and Verstappen's was not created on the track. It was created during the safety car decision that McLaren failed to make. As the race unfolded, the structural consequences became more pronounced. Piastri still produced competitive laps and maintained control over degradation, but each lap carried the hidden penalty of the earlier strategic decision. The problem evolved into something that could not be fixed through pace alone. The FIA evidence highlights that Piastri's pace remained strong, yet the race had moved into a format where speed could not overcome the deficit created by the missed opportunity under caution. By the time the mandatory stop approached, the race outcome had been determined long before Piastri entered the pit lane. When Piastri finally stopped and rejoined the track behind Verstappen, the magnitude of the problem became undeniable. His calm radio response revealed his understanding of the situation. He knew that the race pivoted on the safety car, not on the laps that followed. The problem was no longer theoretical. It was visible on the timing tower and written into the FIA's new evidence logs. It was the result of hesitation during the one moment that required absolute certainty. And now, as the FIA continues its review, the weight of that moment has become central to understanding how a dominant driver lost a race that was fully in his control. The engineering reality inside McLaren shifted the moment the safety car neutralized the race. Before that point, the MCL39 had been functioning inside a perfectly stable aerodynamic window, with strong downforce loading and predictable balance through the high-speed sequences. When the field slowed, the airflow through the floor dropped dramatically and the tire surface temperature began to fall. The engineers saw the numbers in real time. The left front tire, the most heavily loaded corner in Qatar, lost temperature at a rate the team could not ignore. This created an engineering dilemma that demanded immediate action, because every second behind the safety car increased the recovery work Piastri would need to perform once the race went green again. The hybrid deployment strategy added a second layer of complexity. The energy recovery system depends on strong braking phases to harvest power, but under the safety car those braking events are shallow and irregular. This forced the engineers to choose between telling Piastri to harvest aggressively, which would cool the tires even further, or to preserve tire temperature and accept a weaker deployment for the restart. Both options had consequences. What the FIA documents reveal is that McLaren hesitated between these two strategies instead of committing decisively to one. That hesitation shaped the energy profile Piastri carried into the crucial restart, and it reduced the aerodynamic stability he would need to bring his tires back into their peak operating window. As the engineers analyzed the evolving situation, they ran predictive models to evaluate the consequences of staying out under the safety car. These models simulate traffic patterns, undercut risk, and timing deltas based on tire life. The FIA files include those projections, which made one fact unmistakably clear. The moment Verstappen stopped under the safety car, Piastri's required margin to protect track position increased to an impossible threshold. The engineering team had all the information needed to pivot immediately, yet the internal discussion stretched across several corners. In modern Formula One, hesitation is measurable, and in this case it proved decisive. Once the race resumed, the engineering task became exponentially more difficult. The tires had passed through a cooling cycle that altered their grip profile, and Piastri needed to rebuild temperature gradually through controlled lateral load. Verstappen, on new tires, did not face this phase at all. The engineers monitored the sector deltas with precision and watched the consequences of their earlier choices unfold corner by corner. Even though Piastri executed every instruction with discipline, the physics of the situation could not be reversed. The restart had exposed an engineering deficit that no driver could fully recover from.